So I was working away from home today. I had to catch a long train ride for work, and I was supposed to meet a colleague to go on this long train ride together. And it's one of those where I was going away, nice person, etc. But I was not looking forward to a long train ride with this person, doing small talk, asking them how their family was, etc. So, to my horror, got the notification this morning that they'd phoned in sick. Do hope you get better soon. But if you watch the channel, but I was kind of relieved at having the 3-hour train journey riding solo. So what I did is something I haven't done for a while. I hit up WH Smith's and I bought this publication, Boxing Monthly. Obviously, the Klitschko versus Fury special. Possibly not the best timing to be reading this, but nevertheless, I thought it would be interesting. I used to read Boxing News, Boxing Monthly fairly regularly. Now it's more of a sporadic thing, and it's something that I pick up if I'm going on a long train ride, etc. Because, in all honesty, I prefer watching YouTube channels, and there's a lot of good boxing YouTube channels rather than reading a magazine. But for a train ride, it's got a purpose. When I used to read it more regularly, one thing that I always kept a close eye on was the British rankings at the back of the magazine. So, I flipped through, read through my articles, and then I got to the ranking section, and I saw heavyweight, Anthony Joshua 5, middleweight, Chris Eubank Jr. 8. I was thinking, oh, those are actually very, very fair rankings. I think that's very reasonable, and it's good that we can trust a sort of solid, long-established industry magazine to come up with such decent rankings. And I looked on the heavyweights, I thought, hang on a sec, Alexander Povetkin at 4, he's not British. And then to my horror, I realised that I wasn't discussing British rankings here. I was discussing world rankings. And that this very magazine has rated Anthony Joshua as number 5 in the heavyweight world rankings. I then, to my horror, realised that this rating of number 5 was actually given to him before he fought Gary Cornish. So this is Anthony Joshua following on from his, destruction of Kevin Johnson, Zambano Love, those kind of characters. This is Anthony Joshua at 13-0, rated number 5 in the world. Chris Eubank Jr., 19-1, rated number 8 in the world. Now, for me, this is ratings gone absolutely mad. I understand why the public would say they think Anthony Joshua is the 5th best heavyweight. I understand why somebody may come to that decision based on the way he's performed, based on trends, based on how people are discussing him. I also understand why he'd be rated very high by a governing body like the WBC, because they're very, very keen to have him hold their title. He's a very marketable, popular, sellable guy. They're going to be able to charge some pretty monstrous sanctioning fees if he fights for their belt, and they're able to charge a couple of % of his earnings as their fee. So I can understand why these other third parties would rate Anthony Joshua highly. But for an independent, well-respected industry magazine to rate him that highly, I think it's downright irresponsible. Because for a publication such as this, a rating has to be a more factual thing in my eyes. It's got to be based on proven form. It's got to be based on, wins on the ledger. It's got to be based on what you've done, not what you've looked like doing, not how you've gone about it, but what you've actually achieved in black and white. And let me put it this way, and I asked this question so many times. If you agree with Anthony Joshua as number 5 in the world, or Chris Eubank Jr. for 8 in the world, I'm not sure which one's more ridiculous, but if you agree with those two, could you please comment and give me the 3 best people who Anthony Joshua or Chris Eubank Jr. have beaten, and explain to me how beating those 3 equals that ranking. Now, I understand that Anthony Joshua's looked very, very good in beating the 3 best people he's been in with. And remember, this is pre-Gary Cornish, so you're probably looking at I don't know, Michael Sprott, Jason Gavern, Kevin Johnson, Dennis Baktov, Konstantin Ares. Chris Eubank Jr. is possibly even worse. I mean, outside of Dmitry Chudinov, he's beaten nobody. But to have these guys rated so high up, I felt was very disappointing by such a long-established industry publication. And as I say, I understand why the WBC will have an agenda, or I understand why an Anthony Joshua superfan will have an agenda. But I mean, this for me is very poor. So just to expand further, I talk about the top 3 people who you've beaten. Let's have a look at this. Kubrat Pulev, who's number 10, you know, he's beaten Tony Thompson, hasn't he? I mean, that clearly is stronger form than anyone Joshua's beaten. He's beaten Dimitrenko. I'm pretty sure he beat Ustinov. Ruslan Chagayev at number 9. He just knocked out Francisco Pianetta in a single round. Bryant Jennings, he beat Mike Perez. He beat Arthur Spilka. This is all form well and above. I mean, Ksar Glazkov is 7. We'll skip over him because I think he's, I think he's a bit of a fraud, to be honest. Number 6, Bermain Stavern. They rate Joshua higher than Bermain Stavern, a guy who up until a fight ago was WBC champion of the world, and again had beaten better opposition than Anthony Joshua in the form of Chris Arreola. You know, it's crazy. And if you look at the person they rate one above Joshua, Povetkin. I mean, Povetkin's a guy who's beaten Marco Huck, Chagayev, Asim Rekman, you know, Carlos Takam. I mean, Carlos Takam isn't even in their top 10. Carlos Takam is a guy who has performed at a much higher level than Anthony Joshua, a much higher level. And I know that he isn't in the list. Carlos Takam beat Tony Thompson and he doesn't even make the top 10. Let's look at the middleweights. Chris Eubank Jr. is rated higher than Hassan and Jickham, a guy who just schooled Curtis Stevens, or did it in the last year at least. You know, it's crazy. And I think that this is an indication of hype going absolutely mad. You know, Chris Eubank Jr., we've got a guy with no defence whatsoever, who showed that he couldn't block a jab against Billy Joe Saunders. And yet they have Billy Joe Saunders only 1 point higher than Chris Eubank Jr. I mean, for me, based on rate, I'm not actually saying, I would give Chris Eubank Jr. a chance in a fight with Hassan and Damon Jickham. Having said that, based on what they've achieved in the ring, Hassan and Damon Jickham needs to be higher, surely. He's fought at a much higher level. He's beaten much more notable opposition. It's the same with the heavyweights. You know, I'm not telling you that Anthony Joshua couldn't beat Carlos Takam, but based on achievements, Carlos Takam deserves to be much higher. I mean, if you're a football man, imagine the Premier League and you could say, oh, Chelsea won the league this year and Man City came 4th, but Man City looked like the best team and played the best football. It's irrelevant. Completely irrelevant. It's based on form in the book. It's based on wins that each team has. If you're a horse racing man, if horse A beats horse B, but, I don't know, the horse B ran on strong late and the jockey could have given it a better ride, it's absolutely irrelevant. Horse A won. And Anthony Joshua has beaten Kevin Johnson. Chris Eubank Jr. has beaten Dmitry Chudinov. That's it. You know, if I'm honest, I expect these kind of rankings about people who are new to boxing. And don't get me wrong, I have got nothing at all wrong if you think that Anthony Joshua is the 5th best heavyweight in the world, if in a head-to-head fashion. But in terms of writing it down in a ranking, in a world rating as they called it here, I think it's irresponsible to put Anthony Joshua ahead of these far more proven heavyweights. You know, this is not presented in the form of a head-to-head. This is presented in the form of a league table, and in that fashion, it's got to be based on wins in the book. So let me say, I was very disappointed to read this. I think Joshua is borderline top 20 based on form in the book. Borderline. I'm probably more comfortable with calling him top 25, but I could see an argument for him being top 20 based on his wins. Chris Eubank Jr., again, similar level, but to have them both in the top 10, and to have Eubank Jr. ahead of the people he's ahead of, and to have Anthony Joshua ahead of Chagayev, Pulev, Stavern, Thompson, Cam, is maddening. Let me know your thoughts on this. I suspect that this isn't new news. As I say, I haven't been reading the last copy of Boxing Monthly. This is the first one I've bought in several months. So I suspect that they've had these guys ranked this highly for several months now. Let me know if you've picked up on this. Am I right? Am I wrong? As always, appreciate your comments. Thanks very much for watching.